The Leafs with a massive blowout win over the San Jose Sharks from pillar to post, a full 60-minute effort, and Toronto keeps the winning streak alive. We'll recap the game tonight, and then we'll also talk a little bit about this Cutter Gauthier situation going on out in Philadelphia. So we'll get to all that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with a winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. I'm just going to say it. From now on, if you are going to try and log into FanDuel, and if you're going to, be a new subscriber or a new FanDuel participant, do yourself a favor and just fade the Sharks. That's your way to get that $150. Just fade the Sharks because, man, Dave, does that team ever stink, dude. Like, the Leafs just absolutely blew the doors off them from start to finish. It didn't even look like they played in the same league, man.
Well, considering the Sharks have allowed 10 goals and a couple of times this year,
yeah,
bet that they're pretty crappy.
But like, there's one thing to be, a bad team. Like Chicago was bad last year. Like we've seen teams that are bad. This seems like a team that just, like, you could tell there's a bunch of guys that do not belong in the NHL. Like this is just, it's sad. Like I couldn't imagine being a San Jose Sharks player and having to show up to the rink every single day. They've lost 12 games in a row now in regulation. Like they're not even keeping games relatively close either. Like this team throughout this 12-game losing streak, they've scored 2 or less goals in 10 of those games. Like they're just not mustering up any amount of offense. Again, this is back-to-back games now where Martin Jones limited the San Jose Sharks to just 1 goal. And, they outscored them, 11-2, I guess, over this quick home and home. Like they just absolutely crushed them back-to-back games here.
Funny enough, the last win the Sharks have had was a 2-1 win over the Winnipeg Jets, who happen to be one of the best teams in the NHL right now.
Yeah, really weird. Really weird. Well, if you look at like San Jose's schedule this year, like they lost their first 10 games of the season.
Yeah.
And then they went on this weird stretch where they started winning some hockey games. I think they were like 9, like 2 and 4 or something like that. They went on a stretch where they actually looked half decent and then followed that up with this 12-game loss. So it's like there was a little pocket of about 3 weeks where they're playing some good hockey, and in between, bookending that 3 weeks of good hockey has been awfulness. And it was on full display tonight. I mean, sure, you got to tip your hat to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, I think it'd be unfair for us to come out here whenever they lose to games like this, we eviscerate them. So we can't necessarily say, well, not give them their flowers for actually showing up. A game that could be classified as a trap game. They're coming back off of the California road trip, and teams that go west travel back east. Sometimes that first game is a little difficult. Becomes easier when the San Jose team is coming, with you, I suppose, from the West Coast. But you still got to give Toronto their flowers and their credit because, although San Jose is terrible, Toronto, they took advantage and they put their pedal to the metal for the full game. They were hard on pucks. They went hard to the net. They shot everything at this goaltender. They were fighting in front of the net to try and get screens, try and get tips. However way they could try and muster up offense and chances, Toronto was doing that, and they didn't give up a whole lot either defensively in their own end. San Jose didn't get really much of anything. If you look at the heat map, it's pretty barren right out in front of Martin Jones. There's a couple of nice saves that he had to make,
Yep.
but realistically, another solid performance defensively, offensively, and even like the power play was 3 for 3 tonight. Like this was just a pillar to post 60-minute performance by the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's great to see.
It's the 2024 is all about the Leafs just shattering any of the stereotypes that have been placed on them. One of them obviously being unable to beat the teams that they should beat, especially at home. Like I totally forgot that their home record has actually not been very good. 10-7-2. They've been so good on the road, and like there's been so much criticism about how they've played at home, especially against these poor teams. So yeah, we needed to see the Leafs do this against San Jose, right? As you mentioned, there could have been a lot of things that could have gone against the Leafs in this game. As you said, coming back home, although San Jose was also joining them across the way. So both teams had the same amount of travel, which very interesting, but kudos to the NHL for figuring that out, actually. So, yeah, I think
it was the first time I heard this on the radio broadcast on my way home from work. I had to listen to the first period on the radio coming back from the TSM building, but I heard the Bonesy and Ralphie talking about how it's the first time since 2003 that the Maple Leafs have had like a back-to-back home and home series against a Western Conference opponent. So it's been a long time, since 20 years since this has been the case, but they came out victorious in both of the games.
they did. And again, I know people are going to say, they beat a team that they should beat. You still got to go out and beat those teams.
That's right.
Right. And they did it in a way where it wasn't just the top guys getting involved. A lot of players were kind of pitching in on this one, right? You see, Nick Robertson score in his return to the lineup. Jake McCabe.
Yeah, nice little rip from McCabe. How about that Pontus Holmberg little one-hander, just a little flip up above the glove? You saw Mitch Marner's reaction to that goal. I mean, it's his favorite player apparently, Ponte Holmberg, the Mitch Marner's favorite player. But like that just goes to show kind of how bad the San Jose Sharks are. Like Pontus Holmberg is putting his shoulder down and asserting his dominance on these defensemen and taking it hard to the net and getting a one-handed little flip up over the goaltender. Like when that's happening, you know that you have overpowered and overmatched this team. And this is a player that isn't even a staple in this lineup. I mean, he might be trending towards that. I'll say this. I really liked his game since he's come back up in the Marlies. Maybe he is somebody who will, get more of a look going forward as a bottom six player for Toronto, especially if he could do things like that. Like, I didn't know that he had that in him. But still, when that is happening, it's like, all right, everything's going well for Toronto right now. They got the bounces and whatnot that helped them as well. Like even Marner's first goal, like that deflection, I mean, how many times is that going to go into the back of the net for you? Not a whole lot, right? But hey, when the bounces are going your way, they're going your way, and you saw that happen tonight against the San Jose Sharks. But they worked for a lot of their goals too. And I thought that the Leafs very clearly deserved to win this game. They did from top to bottom. I thought everybody had a pretty solid game overall, and on to the next one. The last three games have been against lackluster opponents, the Anaheim Ducks, and then this back-to-back against San Jose. Moving forward, you got a couple of tougher opponents, right? You got to go to the Island on Thursday, and then I believe it's Thursday, and then you got a back-to-back this weekend. You've got the Avalanche coming to town, and then you've got the Detroit Red Wings. So it gets a little bit more difficult. Let's see if they can continue to play this way, where they're buying in defensively, where they're playing a 200-foot game. Everybody, all 20 skaters on that roster, or 18 skaters, I suppose, on that roster. Can they do it against a good team like the Islanders, or an even better team, one of the best teams in the world in the Colorado Avalanche? I will be curious to see that, because again, we can get all excited and giddy about how well they looked tonight, but we do also need to kind of put a bit of an asterisk on it, just because of how bad as San Jose is, we'll reserve judgment. Hopefully they can continue this when they're playing a good team. Similar to the way they did against, the Kings, and we celebrated them for that game. And that was, one of the most impressive victories we've seen this year. I will be curious to see if they can move it forward. Do you want a final comment, I suppose, on tonight's game? Anything else that really stuck out to you before we get to our 3 stars?
No, nothing like particular. No, I think we brought everything, especially like Martin Jones, Simon Benoit. I think another solid night for him, considering he took that. I wouldn't even say it was a high stick. He just got like clocked in the face.
Yeah.
So what is he?
Came back.
It comes back with like the what I keep remember forgetting what they call those.
I don't know. Just for lack of the little nose blockers, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know, nostril blockers.
Yeah, and then he just decides to lay a huge hit.
Yes, he did. That was a nice big hit. And look, man, like Simon Benoit has been like a real revelation for this team. And I don't know, like if they do go out and they end up getting a couple of defensemen at the deadline, like has been speculated for a while, if he still becomes a nightly staple on this team. But I could tell you what maybe is happening is now, it's not as necessary to get a second defenseman because maybe Benoit can be that guy. You know what I mean? Like now you go out, you get a top 4 dude. You get someone to play in the top 4. They're on that first or second pair. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, Benoit can be that guy with size who can impose his will. And in the come playoff time can play that physical style game. Right. So I'd be curious to see what ends up happening here. And if Benoit can continue to assert himself as a, an everyday NHL blue liner. Because I think he's certainly to this point looks the part. Looks like he is to me. I think he leads the entire Leafs blue line in expected goals against, like in a good way, like has the least amount of expected goals against while on the ice at 5-on-5. Like it's an impressive stat, man. That's a stat that TJ Brody typically has always led in. And you got Simon Benoit doing it, and he's playing a shutdown role with Jake McCabe. Like that, they're getting hard, heavy minutes tonight. Obviously, playing against the Sharks, it's not as difficult. But again, we'll see what happens later on this week when he's got to play the Islanders, when he's got to play against, a pretty deep quality team in the Colorado Avalanche. So there'll certainly be more to extrapolate from those games than a game like tonight. That being said, let's take a break. Let's come back. Let's get to the 3 stars of the game for the Maple Leafs tonight. Then there's this really weird situation that went down the other night in Philadelphia with them making a trade for they traded away their top prospect, and it kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, mine included. We'll talk about why it was such a controversial situation a little bit later in the show as well. But before we get into all that, let's take a quick break and tell you about one of our show sponsors. But you're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet. You got your live same-game parlays. You can find new bets in the new Explore tab. You can also make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find the popular parlays of the day. So many more opportunities as well. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We are a daily Maple Leaf-centered podcast. If you're an everydayer, you already know this. But if you're new to the show, you're just kind of stumbling upon us. We got new content coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. You can find the audio form of this podcast so you can listen to it on the go, wherever you get your podcast from. And you can also find us and stream us live. We're not live, I suppose, but you can find us on YouTube. Just hit Locked On Leafs, search it up on YouTube, find us, hit subscribe, and even hit the little notification bell so that you know exactly when that new content is going to be dropped each and every morning. All right, Dave, we're going to continue reacting to the Leafs 7-1 decimation over the San Jose Sharks. And as we like to do after every single victory, we go through our 3 stars of the game. So why don't you kick things off, Dave? Give me your 3rd star from tonight's victory.
I'm going to go with Jake McCabe. Goal, 2 assists, beauty goal too. Like, great play by Marner.
Yeah, just kind of snuck down there, and he was like, hey, get her over here. I'll rip her into the back of the net.
Yeah, but 3 points on the night, that's a nice, I guess, must be a nice feeling for him, considering not really known for putting up the offense. He does try.
You know what? I'm gonna double check this, but I think people would be surprised to see the offense that Jake McCabe has actually put up this year. There was a time where he was riding like a 5 or 6 game point
He
streak, I
was
believe.
a huge point streak.
Yeah, if you include tonight's game where he had 3 points, he's up to 17 points on the season through 33 games. So basically like a point every other game he's getting. Not bad for a defensive defenseman.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's doing all those things, defensively as well. Because we remember, the start of the year, it wasn't exactly going well for him. Then he had that injury that took him out for a while.
Yeah.
And ever since he's come back from that, it was the groin injury. He's looked every bit the part. He's been steady on that second pairing, and it's still, I think, one of the more one of those trades that were made last year that has really worked out because he's still here, right? It wasn't a deal just for 1 year. They actually were able to get more out of that deal because McCabe is still around.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. I mean, when you look at how Jake McCabe has been able to kind of flip the script on his season, where at the beginning of the year it wasn't going well for him. He was a liability, and I do remember us questioning whether it was McCabe or whether it was John Klingberg because they were playing together at the start of the year, if you recall. And I mean, based on how the season has played out, sure, it could have been McCabe's injury that was holding him back a little bit, but also I think just didn't seem comfortable or confident playing with Klingberg, like he's now playing with a defensively responsible player like Simon Benoit. It seems like those two are, forming quite the formidable pair, good formidable duo, which you really like to see if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. So yeah, I think that's it's a solid one, and it's nice to, someone who doesn't necessarily show up in our 3 stars a lot, give them a little bit of love tonight. So good game out of Jake McCabe for sure, and Simon Benoit. I'm giving it to the power play. I mean, dude, 3 for 3. What more do you want out of that unit? And they had a little bit of a new look to it. I don't know if you noticed, but you got Nylander up at the top of the umbrella. You had Marner in the bumper position. It worked out pretty well. A couple of times, it really worked out with those guys. Nylander had a couple of no look passes on those ones, and obviously the tic tac toe on the Matthews bomb, which was an unbelievable goal. It really actually looked good. And I like it because the power play had not been struggling, but it wasn't as efficient, not as dominant as it was earlier in the year. And I don't know if it was getting stale or what the situation was, but they changed it up tonight. And again, you're playing the San Jose Sharks. So what can you really take of it? I don't know. But man, did they ever look lethal and dangerous tonight, being able to zip that puck around the way that they wanted to on the power play?
Yeah, it was a confident power play, right? And I mean, San Jose is not exactly a stout defensive team, but at the same time, the goals that were scored, as you mentioned, the Matthews goal was
there's three guys on this planet that can score that goal.
Exactly. And the Robertson, it was nice. It was funny that when the Leafs got that late 4-minute power play, and then the first unit goes out, it's I could have not gone the second unit out just to give them a chance to get some time, and they still got some time at the end there, and they got a goal out of it. But that's a game there where against the San Jose Sharks where you can try those different things on the power play. You can experiment.
Is
In a,
like how like I don't want to say it's disrespectful, but it's almost as if they're treating the Sharks like practice players. Like these are practice pylons. They're not going to be able to do anything, and we can do whatever we want. Let's experiment a new power play. Basically, just run our power play drill in a game because these guys can't stop us anyway. It's almost as if that's like what happened tonight out there when they were on the man advantage because it was just Toronto through and through.
really was.
Yeah. All right. Second star tonight.
Gonna give it to William Nylander. He got the ball rolling with the play on the rally goal. Like you're having a good season when two guys decide to chase you when you have the puck. It's almost like come here, guys, come over here, and then Riley goes down. Like just a great play and great setup, and like a quiet 3-point performance from William Nylander too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Willie's now with that. I think he's sole possession of 4th in the NHL in scoring. I think with that game, yeah, he pulled ahead of. Actually, sorry, he's tied now with Artemi Panarin. So he and Panarin are tied for 3rd in league scoring with 57 points. So, I mean, dude, it's Willie. He signed his deal, and we were curious. Hey, now that he's got his money, like, what's that going to do? Hopefully, he doesn't pull a Huberdeau here and completely fall off a cliff. Nah, he just goes out and he decides to put up a nice little 3-point night to celebrate. Would have been nice if he scored a goal. Would have been good for the narrative, and would have been good too for my covers parlay. I think I had a Willie goal in there for the narrative play. But either way, a 3-point night for Will. Definitely good to see. I gave mine to Martin Jones. Martin Jones I gave as a second star. I thought just because he's been an absolute rock back there for 4 games now. He's given up, I think it's 5 goals through the last 5 games. Like, it's pretty incredible what Martin Jones has been able to do here since taking over the net for Ilya Samsonov as he's gone through his struggles. And obviously, we know what's going on with Joseph Woll's injury. But ultimately, he's good for a couple of big stops each night. And even tonight, like that, I know they got one past him, but that Henry Thrun guy who did score, the first goal had one really good chance there late in the 3rd period, maybe midway through the 3rd period, where they had an opportunity to put a second one into the back of the net. And he absolutely denied him with the pad, said, no, sir. And he's been terrific, dude. Like, you would have 957 save percentage tonight. Guy's got like a 950 save percentage on the season at this point. He's been unbelievable. And although it's not as though he's been under siege every single game here over the course of this, this 4-game winning streak, but he's stopping the ones that he needs to. And that's what the big problem was when Samsonov was in the net. He wasn't stopping those easy saves. Martin Jones is, and I think, at some point he needs to be applauded for it. So we're going to give him the second star on another really good night.
Yeah, I tweeted out. I said, at what point do you call Martin Jones and be like, what's it going to take to bring you back? Because that's a position when we looked through our position board yesterday, backup goaltenders.
Yeah, it's available. It's right. It's the only goalie who's under contract right now. It's technically Hildeby would also be under contract, but like right now, it's pretty much Joseph Woll is the only NHL goaltender under contract right now going into next year. I want to ask you a question because we talked about this briefly on Overdrive earlier today. If you had to handicap the chances of Woll getting the game 1 start or Martin Jones getting the game 1 start right now, who do you think gets the nod? Like, what's your percentage on who starts in game 1?
I'm like 80% Joseph Woll. Like, if he comes back, I actually probably put 90. If he comes back and he's back to the form that he was in, he should be the game 1 starter. The only reason why I could say Martin Jones is if Joseph Woll it looks shaky down the end here. Yeah, he could have some good games, but I was worried about this injury deflating the momentum that Joseph Woll had. but he was also just lights out before he got hurt. So
Yeah.
I do think it's him. And you know what? I at least from what I'm seeing, I'm comfortable enough to say if something goes wrong with Joseph Woll, you got Martin Jones, and this is not a guy who's never been there before. He took a team to a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah,
Sure,
these San Jose, well, not these San Jose
not
Sharks, but
these San Jose Sharks, the ones that were
um,
actually good.
yeah, a much better version of the San Jose Sharks once upon a time. Yeah, it's interesting because I think both O and Hayes were leaning towards Martin Jones being the game one starter, which I thought was interesting. Like I was with you actually. I think I don't know if I'm 80-90%, but I'm definitely more of 55, maybe 60% for Wall and 40% Jones. But what's interesting is that he's made it a conversation, and that's just a testament to how good that he's played. We're here in the city of Toronto. There seems to be a level of um, comfort when Martin Jones is in net, and there's not there hasn't been a lot of goaltenders over the course of the years that has given you comfort in goal the way that Jones has done over the course of this last stretch here since he's taken over. Granted, the team in front of him playing excellent, playing great in front of him.
Playing as well, right? Like 2 against San Jose, 1 against Anaheim. Let's see
Yeah,
how they do against maybe the
with
call.
Carolina, like when they played Carolina, like he was pretty solid. He gave them a chance to win against the Hurricanes as well, right? And he shut out the LA Kings. So he's played and had good performances against good teams too,
Right.
right? So yeah, well, something to kind of monitor, I guess, going forward, what they potentially do with the goaltending position. All right, really quickly for first star of the game. For me, I'm cheating as I always do. As you'll notice, I did not have Willie. I did not have Marner. I did not have Matthews or Riley or anyone on my list so far. So I just went with the big three. The big three, the core, all of them combined for 8 points tonight. That's Marner, Matthews, and William Nylander. Marner, a 4-point night, 2 goals, 2 assists. Matthews had that unbelievable goal. And then obviously we spoke on Willie with a nice little quiet 3-point night. I thought they all controlled play pretty much the entire game, start to finish. And when those guys are playing at the top of their game, they are some of the best players in the league, right? Like in the world, and they could dominate in the fashion that they did tonight. So, yeah, I just want. I couldn't pick. I couldn't decide. So I was like, I was going to give the big three the first star tonight.
Yeah, I gave it to Marner, but I get your point too. I think it wasn't just one guy that kind of stood out the most. I think there was a bunch of guys, but Marner, just the ways he was scoring to his goals, getting into the dirty areas, getting to the front of the net, right, and then showing off the playmaking ability. Like we saw more of the everything Marner can do rather than just the one side of Mitch Marner tonight. So
Yeah,
I did think that he's he had. I mean, obviously when you lead the game in points, you're deserving of the first star. So pretty good night for Mitch.
it's so funny. Like, I don't want to rehash this conversation that we had yesterday about Nylander versus Marner, but so many people looking at Mitch Marner and saying, "Yeah, he's not having a good season. He's been quiet, this, that, and the other." And I agree. Like, he has not been as good as he has in the last couple of years. He's definitely taken a bit of a step back. I believe that this is more an anomaly season than it is his career going, in the wrong direction. Personally, people can have whatever viewpoint of that as they want. However, even though we're saying this, if you go and you actually look at what's going on with Mitch Marner this year, the guy still has 47 points in like 35 games. Like he's still just absolutely crushing it, far past a point per game, and he's having a down season. That's how good this guy actually is. Like he's almost at 50 points. We're not even halfway through the year and he's having a down year by his standards. That's how good he actually is, and the expectations on this guy. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, we should be expecting that because of the contract he's getting paid.
Oh, I agree. No, we're in full agreement there. 100%. We are in full agreement there, buddy. Um, just I think people sometimes forget how good Marner actually is. Like we're talking about a perennial 90 to 100 point guy who's in the Selke conversation every year it seems now for the last handful of seasons. So still a pretty good player if you ask me. All right, we'll take a break. Let's come back and talk about another guy who I think is going to be a pretty good player in the future, and that's Cutter Gauthier. But it won't be for the Flyers. It's going to have to be for the Anaheim Ducks, and we'll tell you why that is a controversial situation on the other side. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but can we just take a minute and talk about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. And the last thing you want is to be unprepared to take care of yourself or a loved one if you fall ill. That's why Jase Medical gives you peace of mind right before you even decide to go on a plane or whatever trip you go on this year. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared for than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code locked on to get $20 off your order at jasemedical.com.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano alongside my co-host Dave Morassutti. And just a reminder, we are a daily Maple Leaf centric podcast. We got new episodes coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. You can find us wherever you download your audio pods at, also up on YouTube as well. Really quickly, to put a little bow on the Mitch Marner and the night that he had tonight, totally forgot to mention this, but he surpassed Frank Mahovlich today for 7th most points in franchise history. He's got 598 career points with the Maple Leafs, and that now has him 7th all time. So guy is just continuing to climb the ranks and rewrite record books. The three of these guys together. I mean, if I have I believe that Marner will end up re-signing here as well, and they're going to continue down this path and double down on this core four here. And I think that the three of them, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, they're all going to rewrite these record books here, and hopefully it comes with some team success. But individually, we're in quite the era when it comes to individual talent on this Maple Leaf squad. All right, really quickly, let's talk about this Cutter Gauthier situation, who will not be rewriting any record books in Philadelphia. If you're unfamiliar with what's going on, Dave, do you want to kind of break down exactly what happened yesterday and what the fallout has been since?
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, like many people, the Flyers traded Gauthier, who was their 5th overall pick in the 2022 NHL draft. And essentially what happened was he was picked before the new regime came in. So Keith Jones, Daniel Briere, before they officially took over. I think Briere was still
He was there, yeah, as like an AGM.
He was the AGM, but he wasn't the GM. Ever since he was drafted, the relationship for some reason kind of took a turn for the worse. And it was near the end of the season. They're having a hard time really getting in touch with Gauthier. They tried again at the World Juniors to get in touch with the guy because they're going to look to sign. We're looking to sign him because, he's a top prospect.
Good player, man. Like a real good player.
And they just weren't able to get in touch with him. And it came to the point where they're like, basically, he didn't want to be in Philadelphia anymore. And so they called teams. Credit the Philadelphia Flyers for somehow keeping this quiet and not losing any leverage. And
Mhm.
the Ducks were like, "Oh, he's available. Okay, we'll offer Jamie Drysdale." And it was like one of those trades where you kind of like your head kind of snaps back, like,
It
"Oh,
it was
damn."
almo I don't know if it's because it was a flyer forward for a defenseman, but it kinda, like, reminded me. I know they're not the same player, but it kinda reminded me of, like, Luke Shen for Van Riemsdyk,
Yeah,
where it's, like, 2 young prospects, and it kinda catches you off guard that these 2 were swapped for each other. Now, I
that's
know they were a little bit later in their careers, like, Gauthier is still in college. Like, he's not even playing for this team yet. He's not even signed, hasn't taken a one single shift for the Philadelphia Flyers, and he decided, "I don't wanna play here." And apparently he had made that very well known to management that he was uninterested in playing. They thought maybe he would change his mind. Clearly, it didn't happen. And yeah, to what you were talking about, I guess they tried to get a hold of him during the World Championships, juniors, and he was just ghosting them, like just didn't respond. They couldn't get a hold of him. He wasn't picking up his phone, which I think is just bizarre. So they eventually decided, all right, screw it. This kid doesn't want to be here.
mm,
Then let's move on from him. And that's exactly what John Tortorella said yesterday as well. Came out afterwards and after the trade was done, and oh, Tortsy's got some comments. He clearly didn't care a whole lot about Cutter Gauthier and his thoughts on the Flyers organization. Something about, I don't know, Cutter from a hole in the wall is, I believe, the direct quote that he used in regards to Gauthier. But anyways, what I find bizarre though about this whole situation, like, yeah, I don't think that Cutter Gauthier definitely didn't do the right thing here. Like what he did was a little immature by just completely ghosting the Flyers. Like they spent a 5th overall pick on you, and you told them to their face you're excited to be a Flyer. And then eventually you said, maybe not, move me. And instead of, taking the phone calls and meeting with the, management to see if they could try and persuade you and change your mind, you just decided, I'm just not going to talk to them at all, actually. And they could deal with it. They could do whatever they want. And ultimately, that's what happened, and they said, "All right, then we're gonna trade you." And what I thought was weird, though, was how the Philadelphia Flyers, like, went into a full court press PR spin on this, like,
mhm.
right away. Like,
He
they had the GM come out and talk, they had the president, Keith Jones, came out and talk, they had the CEO come out, like, a guy who, like, I don't even think he's managed, like, he doesn't have any hockey operations. I don't believe the CEO for Philly, whoever owns the Flyers, and he's coming out talking about it. And then after the game, you've got Torts talking about it. It's just like, just seemed really bizarre how they had to come out and let it be known what exactly happened and why they were upset by the whole situation, and basically throw Cutter under the bus, a young 19-year-old kid, uh, along with making this trade as the reasoning for making this trade. I thought it was kind of a bizarre situation on both parties.
Yeah, and I Pierre LeBrun got in touch with the agent who was very much non-committal on discuss. Like he didn't want to give anything away, but basically
Mhm.
kind of said it was like a private family reason, private reason why Gauthier didn't want to be in Philadelphia.
'Cause they're lifelong Pittsburgh Penguins fans. Like,
Like
I don't know if that's actually the reason, but I don't did you see the video? Did you see the video?
I did see the video.
So for those who didn't, when Cutter Gauthier, I guess, like, whatever, they were doing these, who's your favorite team growing up, favorite players, yada yada. They were doing just some fun videos with Team USA, and Cutter Gauthier goes, I, grew up a Penguins fan. I love Pittsburgh. I don't know how that's gonna fly with me being in Philadelphia now. And well, I don't know if that was the reason or not for him wanting to leave, but if it was a family reason, maybe they're just diehard Penguins fans, and he couldn't go against the family crest. I don't know. It's
But like you wait a whole year. I mean, here's the thing, like
well, no, here, like apparently, like 2 months after the draft, he told them, "I'm actually not interested." So, like, it wasn't just recently. Apparently, it's been known to Philly for a while that he's not interested. And Danny Briere said we were hoping we could change his mind, but
Mm.
then we tried to meet with him again at the World Championships or at the World Juniors because I believe they intended on, when his college season is done. He's at Boston College right now. When it's done, they're going to try and bring him out of college and sign him and start his pro career and start that conversation at the World Juniors, right? Well, they're already there. They're watching other prospects. They're watching, a bunch of different things. And ultimately, he said, "I'm not even interested in talking to you." So I think that's when the Flyers decide to pick up the phone and try and get a deal done as quick as possible, so that this didn't get out and become public knowledge, so that he still had value and leverage. And ultimately, I think they did pretty good. Like, Jamie Drysdale is a good young right shot defenseman. He's also a former top 10 pick. I think he was what, 7th overall
It's-
uh the year before, 6th overall the year before, maybe 2 years prior. He's had some injury history, obviously, which I think is what's that hasn't allowed him to take that next step into the NHL. He just hasn't played enough, I don't think. But you take a guy who's got great wheels, he's got the mind offensively to play a solid game. You put him in towards his system. Maybe he hammers home, hey, you've got to actually play both sides of the puck here, kid. If he's got those natural skating skills and offensive ability, if Torts can hammer the defensive side of the game in there, I mean, they're getting themselves what could potentially be a top pair defenseman in Jamie Drysdale. I think they did pretty well, all
Yeah.
things considered.
Oh, I thought the Flyers handled this masterfully.
And they got a second round pick on top of it.
Yeah, like they they did a great job considering the situation, right? And like Keith Jones, what a masterclass in like his interview and basically saying, yeah, it was a good thing that like teams we were talking to kind of kept it on the down low because they and look, those teams could have been like, you know what, we're not giving you that because this guy doesn't want to be with you anyways.
Sure, but he would have ended up somewhere. So if you really wanted
Yeah.
that player,
Oh
you're
yeah,
still gonna have to pay for it.
exactly. Like the
Ultimately.
Flyers know what they're doing too, right? They're like they don't want they're not going to put themselves in a position where they're going to lose all the leverage on a player like that, right?
Especially after the World Juniors, where I think Keith Jones even said it. His stock was sky high after winning gold. He had 12 points in the tournament. Like, he was a big factor for the Americans in that gold medal win. So his stock's at a sky high. Good time to make that trade, and ultimately they get it done. So
I
Cutter
will say
Gauthier, an
this.
Anaheim Duck, Jamie Drysdale, now a Philadelphia Flyer. Go ahead.
Apparently there was a rumor that the Flyers, when they were trying to get this deal done in the draft, apparently it was like made known the draft last year that he was kind of available. They went to Montreal to see if they could get the fifth overall pick from
Mm.
Montreal for Gauthier because they wanted to get the fifth pick, and then also I guess then they'd be like, we'll get Mitchkov at 7th, and Montreal passed.
Interesting. So they decided to go with David Reinbucker instead of Cutter Gauthier.
Well,
Um,
thank you, Ken Hughes, for that one. I think if you're a Leafs fan, you're happy to know that the Habs did not get Gauthier.
yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be a pain in the ass to play against for many years, but Reinbacher could turn out to be, a stud defenseman too. So we'll see. We'll see how that one plays out. But yeah, like, that's kind of the first trade of significance of the season, I suppose, and hopefully we get a little bit more of that going forward. Some more stuff to react to, because it's always a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun reacting to trades. This one obviously had many more layers to it, like an onion,
Yeah.
just because of the whole situation involved, and then how Philadelphia kind of dealt with getting the information out there that uh, throwing Goche under the bus, being like, "Hey, this is what he's doing. This is what he's done. This is nonsense." And it's just a weird way to go about it. I will say that, but ultimately, hey man, I hope everyone's happy at the end of the day. Like, hopefully Cutter Gauthier goes on to have a good career at Anaheim. Hopefully the Flyers work things out here. Jamie Drysdale stays healthy, becomes at least a top 4 defenseman for them going forward, and maybe they can get something out of that second round pick. It'll probably be a high second round pick. Like I believe, is it Anaheim's pick there? Because if so, that'll probably be a top 40 pick, right? If that is in this year's draft. So, I think that both parties should be rather happy, all things considered. Yeah, we'll see how these two players do. I can tell you one thing though. Cutter Gauthier's first game in Philly. Watch out, pal. Watch out. You will be enemy number one.
Yeah, I don't know if he realizes what it's like to go to Philly when you're when you basically say, I don't want to be in Philly. Oh,
Yeah.
he knows what he's in for.
I will say this though. It is funny to see Flyers fans crying over this whole ordeal, but also didn't care when they got Eric Lindros over basically a very similar situation. He didn't want to play for the organization that drafted him, and he forced his way out of there and ended up in Philly. Cutter Gauthier is kind of doing the same thing. It's like, it's not as funny when the shoe's on the other foot here, is it now, Philadelphia? That part I do find kind of comical, to be quite honest with you. But hey, just like Philly and the Nordiques, later the Colorado Avalanche, that deal worked out good for both teams. Like Lindros was great, as a Flyer. Forsberg plus turned out to be terrific players for that Avalanche franchise and the Nordique franchise. So it worked out well. So maybe Cutter Gauthier and Jamie Drysdale can also turn out to be positive, positive stories 10, 15 years from now for both sides. All right, buddy. Any final thoughts that you want to get out there? Anything else kind of percolating around the NHL you want to quickly touch on, or anything in life? What's up, pal? What do you want to talk about?
No, I mean, the Oilers they narrowly defeated the Blackhawks, the Bedardless Blackhawks 2-1. 8 wins in a row, though, for the Oilers.
Yeah, Kachuk actually got a hattie as well here. Panthers, they've won 8 in a row. So although the Maple Leafs, they're winning games, they're not really making up any ground because Florida and Boston keep winning games too. Boston currently down as we are recording right now in the third period to Arizona, but dude, Florida, they're a wagon, man. They're turning into a wagon again.
NHL best 14 wins on the road for Florida.
Yeah,
and that's all without Matthew Tkachuk actually being good.
Got a hattie tonight.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem now that Matthew Tkachuk is actually starting to get things going for Florida.
Yeah, this guy heats up. Look out. If Bob's is going to be playing like that, look out. Yeah, you could see. Dude, I wouldn't be shocked. Would not be shocked if we end up seeing a Stanley Cup rematch this year with Vegas and Florida again. They're great teams.
I mean, the West is going to be very interesting when you got the Jets and Canucks right at the top.
Yeah. And again, great turnarounds for, especially the Canucks. Like that team was a joke a year ago, right? Like a year ago today, I think Bruce was still there, Bruce Boudreau, and it was sad seeing them trot him out there game after game. They're losing every single night, and it just didn't look good. Like no one was in a good place. They bring in Rick Tocchet. They look a little bit better towards the end of the year. They get a little bit healthier, but all of a sudden, through a full off season, and they kind of returned a lot of the same players too. Like if you look at that, roster, a lot of them are the same guys. Like, yeah, you got a healthier Thatcher Demko. I guess you have a full season now of Philip Hronek, but outside of that, it's the same cast of characters that was there under Boudreau that Jim Benning kind of put together. Rick Tocchet's just getting a lot more out of him, and I think that's a credit to him and a credit to coaching, and why I personally believe that he's the front runner and likely winner eventually of the Coach of the Year award. But I think did they win tonight too? I think they were on the island. So yeah, they beat the Islanders 5-2, which is Toronto's next opponent on Thursday. So we'll come back on tomorrow's show and we'll tee that up. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms to receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead, hit that like button on YouTube. Leave a comment down below as well, your thoughts on tonight's game. We'll be back with another episode for y'all tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.